other colleagues now were enraged, more or less, because I know I was involved in a number of social engagements with some of these otherwise highly knowledgeable Nigerians. But for him, it was an exercise that needed to be done and see to the end, because it was talking about taking Nigerians, millions of Nigerians out of poverty. And the first thing, the approach was first, let's stabilize these poor people. And that the economies of poverty is to state that these are potentials in redundancy. If you are able to create an economic agent or economic agency out of a human being that could not live sustainably, you are also adding to the capacity, the economic capacity, of the nation. So I think the burden of poverty is still a major challenge for the Nigerian states, and there is still a need, to have focused programs, focused policies to circle out large numbers, of people in the poverty circles in Nigeria. Now, of course, that argument was also furthered by the World Bank, who also now moved from the financial definition of the monetary definition of poverty to the multidimensional poverty, to say that more than 135 million Nigerians were living in multidimensional poverty. And of course, it became a political information, that was not exactly, how do I call it, tolerance, tolerating for the political class, because the opposition was easy, to reference that figure. But again, for the Buhari regime, don't forget that at that time there was a huge advocacy around open toileting, There was a huge advocacy around increasing access to electricity, and a number of attempts to also, of course, bring into reality the implementation of the millennial goals, most of the millennial goals during this time in the office. So for me, I can see a linkage anyway from what the Buhari regime did with what the present government is doing, and I define my linkage as even from the base of the party itself. The party that God used late President Muhammadu Buhari and the current president, H.E. Bola Ahmed Tinubu, to establish. For the first time in more than 30 years, we could reference a political party that we could define easily what ideological standing they belong to. So I think going forward, there's just a need to create a more symbiotic linkage with what the late president was doing in terms of circling more Nigerians out of the poverty circle. It's very important. It's if you have a latency, the economic latency that we are talking about at this time, and I think so far with the economic reforms, the unintended effect had been an increase in the number of poor people, So, and that is why, yes, we have seen a lot of fiscal, fiscal rates, fiscal impacts at the macro level. We are seeing inflation rate is falling. Most likely, the benchmark MPR rate will fall by the time the next Monetary Policy Council meeting holds. We'll see some other, which will also translate to reduction in banking interest rates and all that. But everybody agrees that the millions of Nigerians that are the base of the pyramid are yet to feel it. So that should be a major focus. Everything should be done, to get to hit that large community, you know. We are talking of more than 35% of the population. So if you are able, if this government is able, of course, to achieve that, it would have been a major accomplishment. And of course, it will be an accomplishment that can be worthy of the memory, you know, of late President Muhammadu Buhari.
Well, let's look at the policies very quickly, Dr. Korede. And a lot of people have said this, that you vote for parties, you don't vote for individuals per se, especially when you are looking at the legalese surrounding elections and all that. They say it's the party, that is the platform, you vote for the party and all that. But in terms of Buhari, Buhari came to every election with his reputation. Whichever political party, be it CPC, ANPP, and eventually APC, he had his followership based on, you know, a reputation he has built over time. And that resonates with me in terms of, you know, being able to identify him with his particular character and what to expect from that character. Are we having that now in our polity? Especially, you know, it's not a reputation built at the national level. It was built from his service in the military to the, you know, positions he held while he was rising through the ranks. Are we having that now? And are we, will Nigerians queue behind such characters now as we, you know, continue in our democratic journey?
That brings to mind the principle of party supremacy. Yes, the parties are the ones being voted for in every election, the political parties, officially by INEC. You vote for the party. Actually, you thumbprint for the party, not for the individual. But the party in itself, the owners of the parties, their persona towers over the party, you know, with due respect to what we to ensure that when they become the candidate, they have the capacity to democratically win such elections for.
All right.
I'll make you enter. Somebody will bring out millions of naira to see how they can circumvent that particular structure that has been put in place. So after about 6 months, for the first 6 months, people were studying how do we circumvent this man that is Megaskia, that's a man that does everything right. They were now also looking for how to infiltrate those that were appointed and those that were close to him. We started seeing things like snakes swallowing money and some other things in the country. But the thing is, as far as Buhari was there at that time, from what we saw, those CPC voices, ANPP, ABGA, and some other people, they were silent. Once Buhari is there, Buhari is there. It was about Nigeria. But whenever they want to discuss things at the regional level, we will not be able to say, okay, Dr. Korede here is light skin, I'm dark skin, let us do. By the time we come to Fisayo is talking to every one of us as panelists, and nobody is light skin, nobody has another color. So while he was holding sway as the president of this country, those were also voices. And don't forget that first 2 years, governance. Every other thing is next politics. So immediately that politics comes, you discover that those other smaller voices will begin to speak out more, because politics is very local. What we have in Abuja here is not politics, except if you are from FCT. Yeah. What we have here is people coming from those regions. So when the noise, the CPC block, the ANPP block, the ACN and the ABGA, a part of it, when they want to get the next power, you begin to see voices coming. After all, you were not there. After all, you were not this. After all, you were not this. But Buhari tried as a president to be able to unite. But you can never, I would say, you cannot silence these voices, because they came together as a coalition that we are calling them now. Then it was a merger to form the government. But when they go back, there are still places like, I'm from Delta State, or up until very recently, they will tell you that go and sleep. Delta is PDP, and nothing can be done. So if that PDP should come into a coalition, when we go back to Delta, the PDP's voice will be louder than any other coalition that you'll be hearing. But as far as we're coming to Abuja, the one united front will be louder. So Buhari tried as much as possible to create that one Nigeria image. But going back to the states, because politics is local, we see how those voices that were...
I'm coming back to you, sir, but let me just take Dr. Sanusi on this. You know, the former coordinating minister of the economy, Dr. Ngozi Okonjo, while I was head of WTO right now, what the organization mentioned that when you fight corruption, corruption fights back. And we continue to see that play. Is a flaw in our administrative process even when you come with good intentions? There are people, there are so-called some cabal, some whatever contraption you want to call it, just staying there waiting to make sure that you score an own goal.
Well, good intentions alone do not curb corruption. You need to put structures in place. You need to, introduce technology. You need to study, do your research, study the system, understand where the loopholes are, and where you need to replace, manual, services or services provided by human beings. If it's going to be better to use machines or, technology, you do it. And then you have mechanisms, to check at every point. A Buhari is required, right, at the helm for corruption to dissipate. But then him alone cannot do it without having all of the structures in place. I remember when he just came in, some people started returning money, some people were running away, going on exile. People just thought it was going to be like it was in 1983. But, obviously it couldn't be like that because the processes are different now. There needs to be investigation. You need to be found culpable. You need to go to court. The court needs to do their bit. At all of these stages, corruption is involved. It's quite sad. So it's difficult if it's something that most people, citizens, staff of agencies, even staff of anti-corruption agencies, staffs in the judiciary, everybody is in the business, except you. And when he tried,
it's a business now.
It's a business. It's a way of life. Unfortunately, I remember when he tried, to arrest some judges. You remember corrupt judges? He had facts and everything. So how can you carry a corrupt judge to be tried within his domain and expect that he would come up without having a clean? I mean, with having his image rubbish. They see it as this is one of us. We should not allow this to happen because it's sending a wrong signal. So how best can you do it? He tried that, it didn't work. It was a backlash. Even within the anti-corruption agency, a head of the agency had to be removed, because of all of this. But then I also noticed something was happening. People that were close to Buhari that knew that he didn't like corruption or anything associated with corruption, they latched on that and used it to also displace some of their enemies that were not necessarily corrupt. Because once you tell a Buhari that this person is corrupt, you have already spoiled his mood. And if it's somebody that he likes, the best he can do is to say, okay, let the person step aside, let him be investigated. Especially if you bring some sort of concocted, evidence that, okay, the person is. Most of the time, if you go and investigate those people, you find out that they were innocent. It happened on 1 or 2 occasions during the last administration that I remember of. People try to use the fact that he doesn't like corruption to, fight. But it's a good thing to have a leader that is known for his stance against corruption. But beyond that, we need to put checks, balances in place. Under him, there was TSA. There was, different things that were introduced into our system through the Ministry of Finance, through the Accountant General Office to check, corruption, which I felt, were good innovations. But to what extent were we able to do that? Because in all aspects, from procurement to even budgeting, to even, payments, all of those, you find loopholes in corruption. So to what extent was he able to, curb it? Is what we're talking.
Dr. Korede wanted to make an intervention.
Yes, just an intervention, just for quickly. Yeah, there was, an advocacy, subtle advocacy, with respect to the imperative of the government looking through ensuring that the macroeconomics that we've been developing over time actually comes micro, that is for people to now benefit, at the grassroots, from policies of government. And this speaks to, the vision of Mr. President Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR at the speech at the National Assembly, the second tenure. It's 2 years anniversary, second anniversary. The second anniversary as president. And he said that, yes, the first 2 years we've addressed macroeconomics, we're seeing. But by the third year, that we're latching on to, and the budget, 2025, that will commence as soon as National Assembly, reconvenes properly after all this, we'll deal with microeconomics, to which, they've budgeted a lot of money for things that will go to, micro businesses, small and medium enterprises, starting with the will be expanded, student loan scheme that a lot of parents who can't afford to, train their children in universities and polytechnics are benefiting. So that will put pay and answer to the imperatives and the,
I want to latch out on some of the, submissions of Dr. Sanusi Mohammed, where he, works, I don't know whether it's pro bono or just closely with the Central Delivery Unit of Nigeria, under the Special Advisor on Policy. And, there's concept and there's the implementation of that policy. And that's where sometimes the human interface fails in terms of, making sure that this gets there. For instance, let's look at the issue of removal of subsidy and the windfall that has come at the state level, to just start with that. Sometimes almost triple some of the monies that they've collected, more than double in some cases, in some months. And just as we're having that discussion, we can see in our shots Senator Kashim Shettima, Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with the Governor of Borno State, Professor Umaru Babagana Zulum, all coming into the compound of the former head of state, arriving the venue now. Recall that it was Vice President Kashim Shettima who went all the way to London to, bring back the remains of the late former president. And now they've arrived at the venue of the event now in Daura. We just saw them coming in. So I understand that they are leaving the residence for the helipad where the prayers will be held by the Imam there of Daura. Will get there with the ambience and the commentaries shortly once our colleagues, are ready. Just before, we joined them, we're just talking about, concepts and making these policies work. So we've seen the governors receive much more than they were receiving. Now disbursement and making sure that people get, in terms of sectoral impact in their states is where perhaps some of the states are stuck in terms of the citizens feeling directly why the objective of removing the subsidy and making sure that Nigerians directly benefit from the removal of the subsidy with increment in the allocations to the state. But the citizens are saying, we can see the AC, but we are not feeling the breeze.
Yes, I'd say that advocacy should be directed to the citizens of the state. You see, Mr. President and the current federal administration, as you rightly said, has given, increased budgetary allocation to states and local governments, which is unprecedented, in our annals of governance in Nigeria. So civil society organizations, advocates and all that should encourage citizens of each state to ask their governors questions, to write letters, to go ahead with subtle subtle, come to the Federal Ministry of Finance, and the 1.6, 1.5, 1.7 trillion naira is shared between the 3 tiers of government, and governors go away with tens of billions of naira per state, and local governments get theirs directly. So people need to direct advocacies towards that. The federal government is doing what they could in terms of providing infrastructure, and promised that, we'll go into actually ensuring that citizens benefit. But the president of Nigeria can only do the best by ensuring he allocates enough money to your governor. And it's the duty and responsibility of your governor and his cabinet to ensure that that translates into assisting, the citizenry. After all, there cannot be a federal government without local government and states. Nigeria is made up of the 774 local governments and FCT and the states. Federal government is not, geographically Nigeria. The geographical expression of Nigeria are the 774 local governments that are embedded in states, that is the states and the FCT. So, and we have governors who are educated, governors who are experienced, governors that are voted for by the people. So our advocacy should go to the people of each state to make demands of their excellencies, for them to bring to account what they are doing with these monies they are receiving from the government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu GCFR every month.
All right, to understand the prayer is taking place, we'll take you to the arena.
Ana fita waje